I am hearing you doubled. Yes, I hear you directly now. Real conversations with real people. First, I want to thank the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley, the support that they gave us last week, even though we were not able to have the show. I also want to say thank you all for this amazing journey that we have been on. This is really exciting. 56 episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley. So why are we here? We're here to have real conversations, and we hope to help others with these conversations, but I need your help. Yeah, here I go again. Register at conversationwithtonymobley.com. That is the website. There you can participate in the Mukana chat. Why do I want you to participate in the Mukana chat? Because there is an opportunity for you to ask your questions. And guess what? When you ask your questions in the Mukana chat, those questions can be voted up and down. That's right. And so we want you to make sure that your question is asked and answered on Conversation with Tony Mobley. We now have a quick question form in the website. So if you go to Conversation with Tony Mobley, you don't want to do the Mukana, well, you can just do the quick question form. Do the quick question form, put your name in, ask your question. We can't guarantee that your question will be answered in the quick question form. but it is a way to ask your question. And also, you can ask your question on YouTube in the chat. If you like this and past conversations, we ask that you like and subscribe. Set that bell for all notifications to be reminded of upcoming conversation. And so the very first question is going to be, who is Jason Bache?
Oh boy, he's an elusive guy. Let me tell you, every time I think I understand him, he is just he kind of changes his mind about something. It's the best way I can put it. He's uh he's going to take a lifetime to figure out, uh, even from the guy at the driver's seat. We'll leave it at that.
Well, just a little bit more, Jason.
A little bit more. Okay, Jason Bache is the body that I've figured out that I had to deal with from birth. I don't know what else to say. He is somebody who is not accustomed to addressing himself in the third person. He is not a knight. He is not a doctor. He has no formal titles other than the name that he was given. That you know was the thing that it was not up to him. But he likes his name, and he likes so far what he's managed to do with this interesting journey that he has.
So you're not going to tell us about the fountain of youth that you are partaking of from time to time?
if what makes you think that I have a fountain of youth?
Well, if you've been in radio for over 15 years
Mm-hmm.
and you run a company, you are older than you appear.
Mm,
So you look
okay.
you look
I,
you look like a person that is in their early early 20s.
I'll take it. I'll be 40 this year.
Well, you don't look it. And so that's why I was hoping that you would just share a little bit of the secret sauce, but if you're not going to, we'll
Oh
go
no,
to the
I'm
next
happy.
question.
I first and foremost, I eat pizza 5 nights a week. It goes directly to the hips that I don't have. No, I mean, love what you do what you love, figure out what matters to you, and pursue it at all costs and without any apologies. That to me is the most important thing to do with this life we have. If that has kept me young, fantastic. I don't know. I think of time differently, and I feel like it does speed up as you age, but at the same time, being perpetually interested in everything all the time tends to like slow you down a little bit. So I don't know. Stop, smell the
Well,
roses, figure out what the purpose of the roses are. Wonder who decided red roses were for love and yellow were for sorrow. Because in China, it's the other way around.
well, I want to say, sir, that what you're doing is working for you, and congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. You've always struck me as somebody who kind of kissed death and lived to tell about it, and it, like and has decided that his life, you know, now has more purpose than it ever did before. I've never met you in person. I don't know that for sure, but you have a kindness, we discussed on the phone, that is a kind of infectious. It's hard to put a pin on, but you have a kind of an overwhelming gentleness that is necessary, and I feel increasingly critical in broadcasting, let alone internet broadcasting. There are not enough Tony Mobleys on the internet.
Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. We're going to go to the next question. Is from Art, and Art asks, "Does Jason always talk about himself in the third person?"
Only when he's answering a question which predicates the use of third person singular.
Thank you, Art, for your question. What lessons have you learned from your parents that you're currently using today?
Oh my. Again, something that completely was not up to me, but I feel like I hit the jackpot when it came to family, and not just immediate, atomic family, but extended family. I don't have a great uncle, somebody that like, nobody likes. Um, I am surrounded and have been my whole life with incredibly capable and kind of active and kind of fiercely intelligent people in a way that I again could not have asked for more. I'm the product of a professor of psychological, or I'm sorry, a clinical psychologist and a professor of philosophy and religious studies. Um, and let me just put it this way: there were no clean answers when I said, "Dad, where do we go when we die?" Because I ended up with a lecture. It was, well, son, it depends. Christians say this, various sects disagree on the details. Muslims say this, Buddhists say that, Hindus say this. Um, and by the time he was done, I realized that academia, at least in as a philosophical pursuit, was more about entertaining the questions than coming to a concrete answer.
Mm,
I didn't
okay.
answer your question though, so I'll come back to it. I said before we went on air, living deliberately and dying empty is a critical component of life. Um, Another one that I think I got from my mother, the clinical psychologist, is to never let people surprise you. That reminds you that you are, in fact, in control of your own life. It's very, very easy to forget that you have complete control over exactly one person on earth, that it's you. And it's so easy to get kind of trapped in these little cycles of, I can't believe that person did this, except they did it last week and the week before and the week before. And at some point, you're like, who are you surprised by? So stop letting people surprise you. Let me think. What else? Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I I I I have some insights just based on what you just shared about your parents.
Okay.
So uh I'm going to say that in both instances, you're definitely dealing with a lot of intellectual prowess. Um, but you come across as a person with a lot of heart. Where does that come from?
I'm going to hope in my chest, and I hope it stays there for as long as it possibly can, doing what it's doing to keep me breathing. No, I'm sorry. That was glib. I decided early on that being, hmm, I decided early on that being intentional with what you do and what you say is one of the more important things in this world. And to be, again, deliberately almost anti-vain is the best way I can put it.
Okay.
To simply not be afraid to put yourself out there and to do what you say you're going to do, and for better or for worse, it's better than it's better than the alternative, which is an ever increasing degree of what ifs, as your life goes by.
Okay. I'll take that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Dr. Chris Clark is here with a question. Jason, please tell us the story of how you got started on the career path of video production, especially interested in how you navigated the challenge decisions involved as a young man deciding on a career path?
Mm. Okay. Well, I'll give you a little secret. I haven't done, or at least been paid for, a lot of production. I have done it because I adore it, and it has been one of the privileges of my life that I can afford such an expensive and elaborate hobby. Uh, but it truly, technology writ large, to me, has always felt like a superpower. So for years, I mean, a good 10 years, I I went to electronic music shows, any DJ that's played anywhere around Albuquerque, and there were quite a few. Um, I would, take 1,200 pictures on stage with strobe lights and, music blaring and, the insanity that ensues in, electronic music. I wore earplugs, which is why I can still hear. And I kind of just got into the groove to the point where it became a part of me. And there's been another recurring theme, I guess, in my life, which is, for some reason, when I find that something interests me, I do end up getting paid for it. I cannot explain this, because it is I truly can't, other than I think I'm a lousy salesman because I can only sell things that fascinate me. I have to believe what I'm saying, which again kind of goes against the concept of, well, I could sell ice to Eskimos. No, I would spend an hour talking Eskimos out of ice, okay? Like, because that's not in anyone's best interest. Uh, yeah. So, all right. How I got started in the career path to video production. Yes, I have done productions. Yes, I've been paid for it. But I would say it's no more than maybe 10 or 15% of my income. And it grew out of my fascination with the increasing complexity and technological challenge of production. To me, photography and videography are wonderful because they are 50% technical and 50% artistic. And being able to
Hmm.
bridge that gap is one of the more wonderful challenges that I feel like I'll never nail. But every time I try it, I feel like I'm a little bit better at it, and it gets a little bit easier. It's kind of like, Tony, did you ever have a friend who played the guitar as a kid?
I haven't, I can't think of a friend. Um, my my parents were very religious, and they made sure that all of us was exposed to, and there are seven of us, and all of us were exposed to the piano. And so we all had lessons. I decided that I did not want to sit at a piano. Sorry about it now, but I wanted to just play ball and do that. So, but no, I didn't have anyone that played guitar as a young person.
Well, this will undoubtedly make sense either way. By the way, I too took piano lessons for about 2 years and then ended up a drummer. I luckily can still read tonal music, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the moment I can program a computer to do chord progressions, I really stopped caring about my form and my technique. And, you know, I can speak the language of music. And again, for that, I will forever be grateful to my parents for the piano lessons. But there were two, I feel like in high school, there were two kinds of friends that got into music. The ones that would like practice with their junk guitar, day in and day out till their fingers were sore. And then there were people who would like buy chords and buy pedals and buy new strings and buy a new amp or buy a new pickup, because it was about the gear instead of about
Mm,
the art form. And again, you can always get better gear. A good photographer will outshoot you with absolutely any camera up to and including a disposable one any day of the week. And like that is the part that I feel fairly confident that I figured out. It only took me roughly, I at one point checked the shutter counts on all the bodies of these cameras. It was about 1.5 million pictures. Um, and yeah, it certainly did get easier. I learned Lightroom like the back of my hand, but it's um, it's one of these things where just like something that moves you that you pursue at all costs becomes a part of you. When I was a kid, my mom, I used to get mad at my mom and say, "You're just giving me the psychologist's answer." And she would say, "Well, no, I'm both the psychologist and your mother, and I can't separate one from the other." In this case,
Mm.
the goal is, the message is similar. It's maybe not the best analogy, but it's close enough. Once it becomes a part of you, it actually changes the way you see things, and it changes the way that you start to think about composition. And that has just been wonderful. And I don't care if I never make another dime on it again. Luckily, I've never had to do something in production to pay a bill that that I didn't want to do. Again, I am keenly aware of that insane luck. That is a very rare thing, and I'm not. I don't take it for granted.
Just real quick, can you share your basic setup that you're using tonight?
Uh, oh, to broadcast?
Yes.
Sure. This is a 6K Pro with a Canon 2.8 24 to 70. I think it's the second or third iteration of that lens. Let's see. The newest MacBook Pro that cost entirely too much money. 27-inch LG display in front of me. It's going to be much cooler if I ever actually have the time to finish the studio that's in the room, like, in the backyard of the casita. All the really cool stuff is out there, and I don't think anyone but Mickey has actually seen it. But let's see. That and an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, a Shure body pack, and a web presenter. And that's about it.
Very nice. Very nice. And the 6K is Black Magic 6K, right? For
Yep.
those people who may not
Blackmagic
know.
6K Pro, and it's been the camera that has probably had the most shutter time, but has moved the least. I'd say I've taken this camera on like 2 shoots total, which to me is a gross disrespect to the camera. But I just love that it's right there and it never fails. So there we have it.
So which camera do you take on shoots?
Well, when I'm shooting video, I do take this one, but I bought it. I mean, it came out right in the middle of COVID, and it's not like I was traveling a ton. It's enough of a pain to disconnect that, yeah, it's been on my Ronin too, on my gimbal. I shot my sister's wedding, I think, a year ago with it. It's not that it hasn't ever been out of the house. It's that a regular office hours habit means that having this dedicated space, this dedicated studio, while I'm building the one that really has the fancy stuff, has just continued to make sense to me.
You said the one that you're building is going to have the fancy stuff. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the fancy stuff that's going to be over there?
That's where the Dante and the X32 and the 4K SDI switcher and the broadcast, the newer broadcast cameras, and that really cool way of doing SDI, like bidirectionally over Cat 7, the racks and the all of the ISO record decks. I have a lot of stuff. That's where the Mac Mini Studio is. That's where the 27-inch Apple display is that I love and need to spend more time with. That's where all the fancy lighting is. These are Elgato lights, which, as far as I'm concerned, look fantastic. And if as long as I only need flat lighting on it, in a very kind of small scope, they do absolutely everything that I need. The newer studio is substantially larger, so it does require more elaborate light to be spread out and to be controlled for. So yeah, that's where the fancy stuff is, and I I I don't know. I have a. It's funny. I was talking about, oh yeah, the equipment. Oh yeah, yeah. I practice the guitar instead of using it, and I've got an entire garage full of stuff. But slowly but surely, at the end of the day, if I'm not exhausted, it's the thing that I genuinely enjoy, going in there and um, you know setting up the studio monitors. The last time I went in was to do some crossover work. My subwoofer, for some reason, died between transport of from this room to that room. Don't ask me how, but replaced that one. The Dante adapters have been very slow to get. They're usually delayed about a month. So I bought most of them, but have managed to need another one or two that yeah that has slowed down the progress considerably. But yeah, I'm sound treating the room, and I'm building it. I just decided I wanted to do it right, which meant I'm gonna get I'm gonna get a chop saw, and I'm gonna get lumber, and I'm actually gonna build the sound treatment, and I'm going to label everything. The thing that I have never done, and if you've ever seen the wide shot of this room, you will understand that, like, I'm kind of unless I'm working for a client, I'm very organized when I'm working, but in my own space, it's like you don't want to buy a car from a mechanic. Well, you don't want to see my studio and think, boy, this guy has it together, because it is truly a mad scientist's lair, and there are cables absolutely everywhere. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way, because I know
Yeah,
that
Jason,
there will be
let,
peace.
let me ask you this. So what you just shared in terms of what this studio is going to be when it's a finished product sounds fantastic. My question is it going to be primarily a remote studio for you to control events in other places? Or is it going to be equipment that you would take to do productions in person?
Well, my purpose is to actually have a permanent build, which is one of the reasons that there's a lot of duplicative stuff. There's an Allen and Heath Z mixer. What is it? The Z14. It's a small analog mixer that it sounds wonderful. Um, I could have absolutely moved that mixer, but again, you end up wanting to keep things in a space, because the easiest possible way to end up with a granny knot of wires is to consistently disconnect and reconnect things. And so, no, it's actually my goal to make that a permanent or semi-permanent installation, and keep everything else in the Pelican cases that um, are stacking up.
Okay. Okay. So I I I, I guess what I'm trying to get at is this sounds so fascinating in terms of the the level of uh, the equipment and the quality of the equipment. What is it just to be able to um, I don't want to say that it's like having the Ferrari, but
The
what
Ferrari in the
is
garage that you have to jump start every time because you never start it up.
well, I mean, I know that from the office hours perspective, with, it sounds like, oh, fantastic. It's like um, nerd heaven or geek heaven in terms of all of the equipment. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is your end goal with having this fantastic studio?
What I really want is a space where I can do whatever I need to do without having to mess with wires. And that does require a considerable amount of overhead. It requires a stupefying amount of infrastructure to be able to put a camera wherever you want, to be able to light, a large space, to be able to pull down a green screen and not have to move lights, stuff like that. So really, what it will end up being is professionally, sure, yes, I can and have used it to run events, and at the same time, its primary purpose is for my own experimentation, for my own edification. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no better use for any space.
Absolutely. So it is in fact you paying the tuition that we often talk about as being part of office
I
hours.
have a decade head start on you, Tony. That's all I'm gonna say. Like I've been spending way too much money on this hobby for way too long.
Well, that's fantastic. The next question is, please share your experiences of working before Nerds Limited.
Gladly. Let me start with a fun one. I didn't finish college until I was 27. Now, I just told you that I came from a whole family of academics. Um, so college was seen as like some sort of on a pedestal great thing where great things happened. And I applied, and there was all sorts of pressure, and I got into I believe every school I applied to. I got into Reed, and I got into a school called Earlham that I ended up going to. I learned a lot, but I was completely miserable, and I felt cheated, not by anyone deliberately, but I felt so disappointed that college was not everything that I had been um, expected to expect from it. And there were a lot of reasons why it didn't work, but I tend to center around just the feeling that I needed to understand the world before I could learn about it outside of the world. So I ended up, I ran 3 hotels in 2 states before I was 21, and eventually went back to school, and went back to school at the right time for me, when I was simply there for me. I did not care one iota about how I looked, or how, what people would think if I raised my hand every single time. I didn't care if I was seen as a know it all. I was there for me, and I was there to be educated, whether there were 3 people in the class or 300. And uh, that philosophy has served me well. Just like anything in this world, you get out of college what you put into it. Same thing with work. You get out of it what you put into it. And I was not at a place as a college freshman um, to really be able to put into it what I was capable of putting into it several years later. So I actually started with real working experience, running hotels. Let's see, I was a bank teller for about a week until I realized that money is disgusting, and counting it is the most boring thing in the whole world. And just could not stand that. I'm entirely too ADHD to sit there and like, have small talk while trying to uncrumple and count bills.
Yeah, I have a similar story, and I started college. Well, I went to college, and here I go again with sports. I was playing college basketball and got injured, and ended up uh, just going to work. Um, and I went back to college at 24, and 3 years later, I was out. But most of that time, I was participating in extracurricular activities, doing several jobs at the same time, working for the college, having a part-time job outside of the college. And I understand what you mean about sort of being there for you in terms of, and I had that same kind of mentality in that I was there to get educated, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me from getting that education from that experience. And it was it was probably one of the best moments of my life in terms of that experience. And I'm so happy that things happen the way that they happen. There is always a cost when you do things differently, but I would say that things happened the way for me that they needed to happen. So I hear you loud and clear about going later and getting the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I
Yeah.
ended up with degrees in psychological neuroscience and business. And on any given day, I could not tell you what I learned, in order to get these pieces of paper. I also can't imagine my life without the college degrees that I have. So, it's one of these things where the archetype was completely obliterated by the time I was 19 about what college was and what it wasn't. And by the time I got back to it, yeah, right at around 24, I was ready to truly invest, and I didn't care if I was popular. I didn't care if I didn't care about any of it. Rode my bike in and out of campus, lived off campus, and it was a wonderful time. In fact, it was the time that I started doing internet broadcasting,
Mm,
when I went back to school, and that has paid off better than any business degree ever could. To learn the skills that office hours can reinforce, if not provide, is truly a gift. And it's a gift that, if you permit it to, can be taken into any room where you are, anywhere in the world.
very cool. Let's talk about Nerd Limited, Nerds Limited.
All right. Nerds Limited was actually the result of one of the 400 levels, so, last senior level courses in business school, which was called entrepreneurial business. And the professor said, I hate teaching this class. First day, I hate teaching this class. If you look at somebody who's a sophomore or a junior who wants to study business, they will say, I want to take on the world. I want to, like, move the earth. And by the time you end up with seniors who are, about to graduate and have a business degree, what you end up with is, oh, I just want a reliable job and ascend to mediocrity, and, I'll just kind of take my licks as they come, and, the job market, and my 401k. And he said that over the years, it was horribly depressing for him to do it.
Mm,
So
wow.
the purpose of the course, over the course of the semester, we only actually had one assignment, which was feasibility analysis and a business plan. And it was supposed to be for a hypothetical company. I don't do things hypothetically, at least not in a way that I'm going to be graded on. I do not love I am a stickler for grammar, but I thought to myself, the hell I'm going to stand up at the end of this semester in front of a bunch of people, having written 150 pages of feasibility analysis and business plan, and say, well, by this time I will have done this, hypothetically. So I thought, okay, this is absurd. I know how to incorporate. I I know precisely what I need to do. I have the skill set, so I'm actually just going to actually do it instead of predicting it. Also, anyone who thinks that forecasting a demand curve is a science doesn't understand science. It's more like well witching. That's the part that supply side economics always gets wrong. You cannot like the idea that you can understand, where the demand curve is in any industry, particularly a soft industry like consulting, is absurd. It is a complete waste of time. So to that end, I, did all the work, wrote the business plan, did the feasibility analysis, and at the end of the presentation, I said, "Oh yeah, and I actually, I've truly done this, and I made, whatever X thousands of dollars," and I got the only A. So that was
Fantastic.
Nerds Limited, and when I incorporated it, I was going for Nerds Limited like LLC. If I was a S corp or a C corp, it would have been Nerds Inc. But when I did the articles of organization for an LLC, I filled it out as Nerds Limited, and I got back a congratulations, you have Nerds Limited Limited. So it's one of those odd names that I kind of ended up loving because it's bizarrely unique.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So the next question is, you have to choose between Windows and Apple. Which one?
Apple, every single time, all day, every single day. And here's why. PCs have become a commodity like pork bellies. Anytime you have something that is high end that becomes a commodity, cash is king, and it's a race to the bottom. Microsoft no longer cares what's done to their operating system. And the moment hardware manufacturers figured out they could subsidize the cost of the hardware by stacking the deck against you with their modifications to Windows, it was simply just a continuous stroll downhill. And it's broken my heart, but Windows has sucked a little more every single day since Windows 7. And I hate that. It's not that I don't have PCs. It's not that I'm not paid to create advanced systems and set up workplaces for them. I should say Windows because I make a lot more money. But at the end of the day, Mac OS is built on FreeBSD, which is one of the oldest and most knocked upon operating systems. And if your goal is to accomplish something instead of not having a choice, Mac OS is far and away the easier operating system. And I can say that knowing just as much or more about Windows.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I am also in your camp as well. I used to do computer repair with towers and stuff, and I've jumped into the Apple world, and I love Apple computers. I love Apple products, period. And all my family tells me I should be being paid by Apple based on the things that I share with them. And so, yes, I love the platform.
It's
Clark Lopez,
wonderful.
what
They
are
don't. Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
They don't do everything right, but the idea that people have such an emotional connection to something that everybody else despises, again, it is a privilege to be able to afford them. Should they cost 40% more? If you can afford them, they are every bit worth what they cost. I drive a Honda Civic. I don't have an elaborate car. The one before this one was another Honda Civic that had 236,000 miles on it. I drove it into the ground because its purpose is to get me from A to B. A computer is the same thing as is technology writ large, which is a means to an end. It is a superpower to kind of take your ideas and transpose them in a way that you would not be able to do otherwise. So if your goal is to solve problems, then the thing in front of you that's helping you should not be one of those problems.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And now I want to ask you about the creative part of Apple computers, but we're getting low on time. So, but real quickly, so you talked about the artists and the prac practitioner in terms of video production. Um, how is the Apple computer a resource for that?
When Mac OS upgrades or updates something, a considerable amount of thought and time and energy goes into not just what we are making better, but how how humans' brains will perceive the change. And if they're doing it right, you will be delighted by the new things, but not necessarily need to make use of them, and they won't get in your way.
Hmm.
If you go back 4 versions of Mac OS, you will be shocked at what it couldn't do that you could swear you could do 3 years ago. That is the result of a tremendous amount of hard work by very, very smart people that is designed into the platform. Having had to write apps for iPad and iPhone, I can tell you it does not happen by accident. It is codified in a way that is exceptionally difficult. And it is the reason that you don't have to think in order to use it. So, yes, there's a barrier to entry, but the barrier to entry is intentionally designed to get out of your way. You will always get a single answer when you try to figure out how to do something on Mac OS. That is way harder than having 15 ways to do something.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that. Clara Lopez Waterman from Brevard, North Carolina, asked, what made you choose New Mexico as a place to call home?
Well, all my stuff's here, so I don't want to move the studio again. No, my let's see. I grew up in northeastern Ohio, actually very close to to where Alex grew up. We both listened. We were close enough to like have the same market for radio stations. We'll put it that way. I was on the Ohio side. He was on the Pennsylvania side, and I went to high school. And my junior year, I loved high school. My junior year, my parents, the professor of philosophy and religious studies and clinical psychologist, after 26 years, got divorced. Now, this was not a soul like ripping thing. My first thought was, oh, typical teenager, like, but what about my senior year? Like, you guys are moving to different places. Like, I don't want to go somewhere else for my senior year. And my dad ended up taking a job at a graduate school in California. My mom moved to Santa Fe to be closer to her sister. It wasn't really a matter of where I was going to move. It was just where my stuff went, because, of course, after my senior year, I was just going to go off to college, which, as has been previously established, did not, work out the way that I thought it would.
Right.
So I chose Santa Fe, and I absolutely adore it. I'm convinced that I had seasonal affective disorder for the vast majority of the first 17 years of my life. The light here in New Mexico is so ubiquitous and so, flat's the wrong term. It is so dynamic that it is intoxicating to me. I love the idea that I live in a real city, but I can drive for 20 minutes in any direction and be in the middle of nowhere. That's why.
Yeah, I wish we had time for you to share some of those photographs that you were sharing with us before the conversation started. It was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Taylor Sunderhouse is here with, do you like to do live productions or post-production?
I like doing live production because I don't have the attention span for post-production. That said, I've had to learn to do post-production, and it is its own superpower to be able to do that. In fact, the first time I did a video as an adult was in 2014, when a very good friend of mine was asked to present at NAB. He was starting a drone school, and he didn't know how to kind of do any of this stuff. So he said, "You want to come?" And I said, "Sure." And over the course of 2 days, I made a video that kind of made him, the star of the lecture. And I was reminded once again that they each have their own kind of special payoff. As far as production, though, as far as I'm concerned, if I can't do it live and in real time for anything regular, it's dead to me. And luckily, I'm born in exactly the right time when, pretty much anything I can cook up in my head, I can figure out how to wed existing technologies to create.
Well, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Taylor. And thank you, Clellock, for your questions. The next question is, what's next for Jason Bache?
Oh, I'm just getting warmed up. Oh boy. So when I started Nerds Limited, despite all the business plan and business planning, which, again, just like law school is, I'm convinced, not designed to teach you how to be a good lawyer. It's designed to, make sure that you don't get arrested. And business school, the purpose is to they teach you kind of how to not get arrested for tax fraud and how to not, basically what not to do, but not what to do. Along the same lines, I didn't know what to do other than, I didn't want to starve. I graduated in May of 2009 and rent was due in June. So, I started Nerds Limited simply doing repair, fixing MacBooks and what have you. And, at this point, that's probably 3 to 5% of what I do. Really, what's emerged over the last dozen years or so is that I accidentally have a marketable skill, which is I love people. I get technology and I love people. And to be able to have a foot in each world has been extremely useful. Corporate consulting, it sounds like the most boring thing on earth, but being able to take an organization that has what I believe to be kind of systemic failure as the result that, that occurs when a C-suite and a bunch of engineers have to coexist. I've found a beautiful niche where I can go toe-to-toe with engineers, and at the same time, I do understand how to read a Gantt chart and how to push back when is necessary, but at the same time, kind of be a liaison between the two, and all the while taking existing technologies and creating something that is greater than the sum of its parts. And I've managed to do that in a whole bunch of different disciplines.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. What are you most concerned about for the future?
About me personally, or the world writ large?
The world at large.
I decided not to watch any of the prior conversations because I wanted ours to be genuine, and I didn't really want to accidentally kind of fall into somebody else's answers. So you may have heard this one, but here it goes. There's a level of poised derision and acrimony that has become worse over the course of my short lifetime that is going to destroy this world. We'll absolutely destroy this country first, but we'll destroy this world. There's a level of disrespect and kind of playing for teams. And I don't just mean in politics. I mean, people for some reason have started sorting themselves because they, I think, are overwhelmed by kind of the complexities that the internet brings to their doorstep. So to make sense of it, I think they've started sorting themselves. Are you this or that? Are you in this team or that team? And that's a normal thing for the human brain to do. But we need to remember that if we surround ourselves with people who agree with us, we are not going to have any new experiences. We're not going to learn. We're not going to grow. And if anything, we are simply going to build walls around each other. It sickens me that in the information age, now more than ever, people debate fact. Like, think about that for a second. You have the length and breadth of human knowledge in your pocket, and people still debate facts. That is, it's got to go. And that worries me all day, every day.
I'm just going to say wow. I'm just going to say wow to that, because now I wish we had more time. I'm just going to say
it's your format.
I'm right there with you. Part of the initial reason for having conversations with Tony Mobley was that there is a need to be able to have conversation with one another and be able to get through the things that separate us and dwell on the things that we have in common. And I don't think that there is enough of us that try to do that. We get, as you say, sorted on, what team we're going to be a part of, instead of talking to each other and recognizing that we have more things in common than we realize. And so thank you so much for that answer that you gave.
Absolutely. We are more alike than different, and that is true for any two people anywhere in this world. The human experience, although homogenous, is insanely different. But, no matter what people say or think, we are more common than we are uncommon.
And with that, I am going to stop there. We have a couple of more questions, but I don't want to ask any more questions after what we just talked about. And I'm just I want to be transparent. I think that if someone is watching this conversation, I think that the last things that we said is what they need to focus on. And so, Jason, thank you so much. We truly could have gone on for at least the old format, if not longer, of how long Conversation with Tony Mobley goes on. So again, thank you so much. And I'm just going to get into my thanks. And I want to say, when you have time, this is to anyone who might be watching and those who might watch later on. When you have time, please go back and look at the 50 plus episodes of Conversations with Tony Mobley. I think that you will find something that you like and that will hopefully be helpful. Special thanks to Kimberly Mobley, Ron Mobley, Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay, Office Hour members, DVE Store, Liminal Entertainment Technologies, Byte Hive, Video360.com, ProofAlone.com, Cloud, Bedrock LLC, Ken Jordan, Jonas Dattel, Aaron Huslich, Cherrick Cheetah, David Brady, Marcus Lee Folk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manolo Lozano, Jeffrey Powers, Bo Cordell, Mickey McAshore, Hazmat Gajar, Doug Moeller, Laura Thompson, Bryant Shan, Dennis Champion Walker, Roscoe Jones, George Butters, Joshua Menden, Danielle Maxwell, Taylor Sunderhouse, Adrian Allback, Michael Marv, Conversation with Tony Mobley, producer, Clylac Lopez Waterman. Conversation with Tony Mobley can now be heard on radio station Z98.1FM.com, Sounds of the City, Cincinnati. Also on TuneIn Radio app anywhere throughout the country through the TuneIn app. Special thanks to Taylor Sunderhouse and the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley for making this possible. Thank you, Jason, for our conversation today and for doing the work that you do. Featured
My
guest next week is the maestro himself, the director of the office hours remotes, Victor Cajallo, musician and video production producer. Next week, we're looking forward to that. Coming soon, more conversation with more interesting people. Thank you all so much for being here with me tonight and my friend Jason Bache. Take care. Good night.